This is the Note Closers Show, where you get the latest developments in distressed note investing and learn the secrets of how you can control millions of dollars worth of property for pennies on the dollar. Get educated and entertained by someone who has closed thousands of deals and lives to support you in achieving the same. Now, here's your host, CEO of We Close Notes, Scott Carson.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Note Closer Show. I'm always excited, your host, Scott Carson here, and we've got a very special guest today. We get a ton of questions, not only into the office personally, but also on all the different social media websites we have, and of course, our different virtual workshops and Note Camp. And so I thought it was time to bring on our good buddy Daniel Malcolm from First National Acceptance Corporation. You also guys go buy something else, don't you, Daniel, as well as what you're buying?
As far as our name?
Yeah.
FNAC. Sometimes people call us FNAC.
There you go, FNAC, exactly. So we're excited because you guys are one of the largest buyers of owner finance notes in the country. And so I thought it was important to bring you on, just visit, talk a little about some of the things that you guys are doing, what you guys are looking for, and go from there. But good morning, man. You're from up in a little chilly Michigan this morning, right?
Very chilly. We woke up to snow, and it's 25 degrees, and that's after coming off of several days of 60s. And so the weather in Michigan is always bipolar.
Right, exactly. You're the seasons of winter and July, right?
That is correct. We have mosquito season and snow season.
Snow and mosquito, that's good stuff. But talk a little about what you guys do, first off. So those that don't know you, because we're going to live streaming here on the Facebook Lives, but we also have this recorded out there for iTunes. So tell them about what you guys do and then about yourself as well.
All right. So First National Acceptance Company, we are based out of Lansing, Michigan. We're a subsidiary of First National Bank of America. So we're an institutional buyer of privately held land contracts, notes and mortgages, deeds of trust. We buy nationwide. We buy about 100 a month. We just finished up November, and after November, we've bought so far this year 1,218 notes. So actually, I guess we're averaging out to a little more than 100 a month. And with balances exceeding, I don't have it on there, a lot.
A lot of notes.
Around $86-90 million of balances so far this year. And we've been doing it for about 40 years. We know what we're doing. We have good pricing. We've become known for our very good pricing. We can, on sweet notes, we can pay up to 95 cents on the dollar. On average, our discount is about 15%. So on average, we pay 85 to 87 cents on the dollar.
Nice. Now, let's talk about that. We don't want people getting all excited if they got a 4% interest rate loan that you're going to pay them 95 cents on the dollar of that stuff. Because you know how people think. They think of nothing but the best numbers and not of realistic numbers a lot of times, though, too, correct?
That is correct, yes. There are a few different factors that play a part in our pricing that need to be taken into consideration when structuring a note or originating a note. We take equity, seasoning, and credit. The creditor, the borrowers, or as we call them here, the purchaser on the note, purchaser on the note. We take those three factors into account. Credit plays the biggest role because we've been doing this long enough that we know that credit scores tell a story. And if you've got a 560 credit, I don't really care how well-intentioned you are a much higher risk of default than someone with a 750. And then equity is important because, the more skin in the game the person has from a large down payment or making payments for 2 or 3 years, that's the more money that they have to walk away from if things get tough, the better because they're less likely to. And then seasoning, the number of payments made, that plays a large part because that also plays into the skin in the game, the equity, and then also emotional equity in the property. If you've been there for a long time, this is your home. You've raised your kids there, or your family's there. You've got more than just financial equity. You've got emotional equity built into the home as well.
Yeah, those are all good points, and we're going to open it up for questions because I guarantee we'll have quite a few from those that are watching. But you guys, one of the things I love is that you guys kind of have a rough kind of formula. I think the 10-10-10 model that you like to share with people to give them a kind of a loose guide of what to look for? Because that's one of the biggest things that we get all the time is phone calls. Hey, I own a finance a note. I want to sell it now to get my capital back. And most people are like, well, based on what you've told me about the note, you don't really have any, it's not a valuable note at this point. So why don't we share what that 10-10-10 model is and go from there, Daniel?
Absolutely. And I'd kind of like to change it to the 10-9-10, but it just doesn't sound as good. And it's not as easy to remember. So I've left it 10-10-10.
Okay.
But the first 10 is 10% or more in equity. And so if you can when you get a down payment, try to get 10% or more in your down payment from the person. So right out of the box, they've got some serious equity in the deal. If you can get 15%, 20%, heck, if you can get 50%, get the biggest down payment you can get that is going to still allow the person to have some type of safety net of cash for future living and paying on the note.
Right.
The most you can get down, the better. So that's the first 10. The second 10 refers to the interest rate. And you mentioned before a 4% interest rate, and that's a very good point. The interest rate is tied in with the discount in the note. The more interest income that we can make off of the note while we're collecting payments on it, the lower the discount can be to the principal balance because we don't have to have quite as large of a spread between the discount we buy at and the principal balance due in case of an early default or an early payoff or default. Right. And the reason I would like to change the 10 to a 9 is over the last couple of years, there's been a lot more scrutiny on this owner financed industry, and we're encountering a lot more note originators that are doing seller finance, but they're doing a large volume, and so they're doing 5 or more a year, or very large dollar, and 1 or 2 large dollar can cause you to hit to qualify as a creditor, and then that high interest rate can cause you to have a high cost mortgage. So long story short, we're going to stick with 10-10-10 because it's easy to remember, but just remember, don't go over 10. And really, I would advise most people not to go over 9.5. Now, if you're just one person doing one note and you don't think you're ever going to do another one, you can set that interest rate at whatever you want. As far as I know, that's my current understanding of the legal landscape, the regulatory landscape. Now, when you bring it to us, because we are a regulated bank, we might chop that interest rate down to 9.5 or something to make it legal for us to carry. But if you're not a creditor, that's a simple thing for us to fix and do. The last 10 refers to the amortization. So we've got 10% or more in equity, a 10% interest rate, so a higher interest rate, and then a 10-year AM. If your note purchaser or note payer can afford the monthly payment and pay it off in 10 or 15 years, go for it. That makes it more valuable to us because it makes it a little less risky because they don't have to stay performing as long. And then also it allows us to recoup our money faster so we can be a little bit more lenient on the discount, and some of the other factors of the note that might not be great can be made up for in the fact that it's going to pay off quickly. And then it also protects the note seller in case you decide you don't want to sell your note. You want to get your money back as quickly as you can as well, and you want to decrease your likelihood of default. So 10-10-10, equity, interest rate, and amortization, payoff length.
So one of the questions we always get from people is, well, 10-year AM, can we do a 10-year balloon and do it a 30-year AM?
I would, as far as I know, yes. You could, if you're not a creditor, you can do balloons, and that's not a bad idea. We still see lots of notes all the time with 3-year, 5-year, 10-year balloons. I would just, I guess, because every state is different, maybe before you write a note with a balloon in it, check with a good real estate attorney in your area and make sure that he doesn't think you're doing something that is wrong for your state. But yeah, for us, if, let me back up a step before I talk about the balloon. We had talked about credit before. I would highly recommend anybody that's originating a note. There are lots of good borrowers out there who have good credit, have a lot of money for a down payment, and they still don't qualify for bank financing because the box has gotten a lot smaller, or they're self-employed, or numerous reasons, or it's an odd property type. You will serve yourself well as a part of considering someone for originating a mortgage with them. Make them check their credit and provide you with a free credit report that they can get themselves, so that you know that they're not 480 credit or 520 credit. There are 650 and 700 credit borrowers out there that want seller financing. In fact, this year, our average credit score that we bought is 652.
Yeah.
So I mean, they're out there. And so I would definitely screen people credit-wise and get the best credit borrower you can. So now going forward a couple steps after talking about that, what were we going back to, Scott?
No, that's perfect, because we were talking about the amortization and then balloons and stuff like that.
Yeah, balloons. So if you start out with a good credit borrower that is, say, 600, 610 or above, you're increasing the likelihood that they're going to be able to refinance at some point in the future. And so if you decide you don't want to sell your note, you could end up with an early payoff, which is going to be a good situation for you in most cases. If you bring it to someone who wants to buy the note and it has a balloon in it, us, for example, we have two different types of full buyout programs. We have just the regular full buyout, and then we have what we call the full balloon program, where if the borrower has 620 credit or better, when we look at it and there's a balloon coming due, we will pay a little bit more on the full buyout for that note, because we anticipate that when the balloon comes due, they're going to be able to refinance either with us or with someone else and pay us off early. And part of the reason that we anticipate that is because as a bank, while we're collecting the payments, we report to credit bureaus, which brings me to partials. If you do happen to have someone who is, a 600 or a 610 credit, and the full buyout offer that you get is too big of a discount for you, consider a partial. We love doing partials, and while we own the partial, while we're collecting those payments, we'll report the payments on credit, and we could potentially help your borrower greatly increase their credit score, allowing them to refinance and pay you off early, or when we get a couple of years into the partial, or when the partial is done, we may be able to give you a much better full buyout offer than we were originally.
Yeah, that's a good point. A lot of people, I love what you're saying, because a lot of people, they go to a workshop, they go to a seminar, they hear about owner financing, they've got a property. It's not the old days, whereas you could sell a note off at the closing table and expect to get 85 cents on the dollar conveniently. You like to have a little bit of seasoning too, don't you, Daniel?
Technically we only require 1 month of seasoning, but if you're bringing a note to a note buyer, us or anybody else, that has less than a year of seasoning, they're going to want to see great equity, so a great down payment, and they're going to want to see a good credit score.
Mm-hmm. So we see a lot of people that they'll do owner financing, they'll do it at like 5-6% interest rate because they think that's what they should, make it attractive to get people in to buy it, and then they think, oh, I'm just going to sell the note for what I owe and get my money back and go back and do that. That's not the case. If you're if they get credit, great. But if you offer up something of a 5 or 6% interest rate, and you guys are looking for what, a 10 to 12% return or greater?
We're looking at for like an 8 to 10.
Okay.
As low as a 7.
Okay. Yeah. So let's say you want 10. We'll just say that, but they rated at 5% interest rate. Well, that's almost a 50% discount right there to get a 10% return. And a lot of people don't realize, not that you would be exactly 10% or 7 or 8, because there's other factors, obviously, skin in the game, credit score, stuff like that. But that's a good guideline for people to keep in mind. Just look at all the factors versus you go ahead and owner finance. Try to find the best possible borrower versus the first person that pops up, right?
Yeah, if you want to owner finance a property, whether you're going to do 1, 2, or 100, what you have to remember is you are the bank. So you need to think like a bank, and you're offering a service. And so if you have somebody come to you and you're offering to finance them when a traditional bank won't, because they've got 550 credit or they were bankrupt 3 years ago, you're owed a higher interest rate. You're taking on greater risk, and that's exactly what banks do. the higher the risk, the greater return required for the risk. And so just because they could go to a traditional bank and get a interest rate of 4.5% or 5% does not mean that you owe them a 4.5% or 5%. Because if they could get that, they would go to the bank. And they're with you because they can't get it. And so the market calls for you to charge a 6, 7, or 8% interest rate. You're taking on a lot of risk. You're providing them with a service, and you want to make this a valuable asset for you to hold on to and potentially cash out at some point in the future. Now, if you happen to run across somebody that's got a 50% down payment and 800 credit, and it's a nice brick ranch in the middle of a great neighborhood, then perhaps you give that person a 5% interest rate, but you don't have to.
Yeah, start with the end in mind a little bit. We got some questions from people.
Yeah, we have a question. Adam Taylor asks, do y'all offer cash out refinancing?
Now, I think we need to ask Adam, is this for a mortgage that he's owner-financed on, or is he selling the note? Because I think it's when somebody asks cash out refinancing, it sounds like they're looking for a new loan. Is that right, Daniel? Do you get this question?
That's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah.
Well,
and you guys don't do that.
well, she's clarifying. I mean, the bank side does. So we have a residential lending department, and we provide, we originate loans and we refinance loans in all 50 states. We don't do refis in Texas. We do originations in Texas. But everywhere else, yeah, we've got a refinancing option. So if he's got someone that is making payments to him and he doesn't want to take a discount that like we would in buying the note, he can certainly contact First National Bank of America, which we're a subsidiary of, and see if his borrower would qualify for a refinance and pay him off in full. That I wouldn't hold it against anybody to try that first. If you can get him financed and get your full amount of principal, do it. And if you can't, then come talk to me.
There you go. That's smart. What kind of percentage do you guys keep track of that? How many notes that you buy that they end up refinancing out after a while?
I don't have the exact number, but it is very high. A lot of the notes that we buy, we will hold them for 5 or 6 years, and then they're gone. Either they've refinanced with us, or they have they go to Quicken or somewhere and refinance.
Or they move out, sell the property, move on like once every 7 years, like a lot of people do.
Yeah, there's a lot of that too. Yep.
Cool. Any other questions right now? Oh, okay. So let's talk about seasoning. And why don't you explain what seasoning is, Daniel? Because a lot of people, I think, don't get that.
Absolutely. So seasoning is the number of payments that have been made. So if you have collected 24 payments, then you have 24 months of seasoning. And something that is important to remember with seasoning is to keep verifiable proof of those payments. I would strongly encourage folks to check out servicing companies, especially if you own more than one note. A good servicing company can be worth their weight in gold. They charge you a small monthly fee, but they track the payments for you. When you need pay history, it's third party, it's verifiable. You can provide that to your note buyer, and they'll know that it's accurate and correct. The servicer handles sending out the interest statements that's supposed to go out each year, which a lot of owner finance sellers forget about or don't understand how to do. They will help you set up escrow if you want to escrow for taxes and insurance, which I would. I mean, on my notes, I would definitely have escrow for taxes and insurance because you want to protect your property. So that's what seasoning is. And one of the biggest, most important parts of seasoning is keep track of those payments so you can prove the seasoning. Don't accept cash and give out handwritten receipts.
But some people still do.
And I suppose if you have to receive cash, then deposit the cash by itself because it'll be in the amount of the payment, and then you can provide bank statements. I mean, it's not great, but it's better than copies of a ledger book of a bunch of handwritten receipts.
Yeah, it decreases the value on it when you don't have a true We see that quite a bit of people. Oh, we're servicing the note ourselves. It's your value just dropped. That $20 you could be spending a month would have gotten you a lot more bigger value in the long run versus you trying to do it all yourself.
Yeah, and some of the servicing companies, there's not even a charge for the note holder. The charge is passed on to the note payer, and they pay $10 or $15 a month for the service, and there are a lot of note payers that would really prefer to do it that way.
Mm-hmm. And in a lot of states, you can't collect payments in specific states. You've got to have a servicer do it for you to keep you compliant. And I think a lot of people try to slough off on that, and the idea that, oh, I'll wait till I get caught. Well, do you want to risk your whole note if you get caught and doing something illegal?
That's an excellent point. Yeah, I think states like New Mexico, Arizona, maybe, and Nevada, I think are some of the states that, they require third-party servicing. It's kind of too bad all 50 states don't require it. That way I would always get it.
Right, exactly. Got a question here from our audience.
Yeah. Michael Rogers asks, is there any states that you prefer to buy notes from? Obviously non-judicial.
You guys buy in both judicial and non-judicial states?
That's an excellent question. Yes, we do buy in both. And the states that we buy the most in are Florida, Michigan, Texas, North Carolina, and Arizona, and California. Let me do those a little slower. Texas, Michigan, Florida, California, Arizona, North Carolina. Those would be like our top 6 states.
That's kind of funny. You got non-judicial states, but then you also have Florida in there, which is a judicial state that has a little bit longer foreclosure than the rest of them.
Yeah, and year to date, Florida is actually the one that we bought the most in this year. Our business in Florida has picked up quite a bit this year, as well as Arizona. Arizona didn't used to be as large of a
piece of business or book of business
as it has become. Part of that is we have a couple really great note brokers that have joined our team over the last year, and they have greatly increased the number of notes being brought to us from Arizona.
So let's talk about note brokering a little bit. What's kind of involved with that, Daniel?
So note brokering is a great way to learn the business and to get involved in note investing without putting a bunch of your money at risk. If you've never bought or sold a note or originated a note and you know nothing, you can learn a lot through brokering a note. And it's really simple. Brokering a note is very much like being a realtor helping people sell their homes, except instead of helping people sell their homes, you're helping people sell their note. So there are different companies out there that scour the courthouse records, and they buy up seller finance records, and they create lead lists, and our note brokers will mail those lead lists and say, hey, you want an offer on your note? And when they get a lead come back and say that they do want an offer on their note, they'll bring the info to us. We provide the note broker with an offer. We pay for the closing costs and the processing costs. So when the broker gets our offer, all they have to do is take out how much they want for their commission, and they pass on the difference to the note seller. The note seller agrees, then we're in business, and we do some due diligence stuff, and then we pay the seller and the broker about 30 days later. The majority of our deals close within about 30 days, but we always say 4 to 6 weeks. That's a better expectation to set with everybody, because you never know when something's going to come up.
You guys do a really good job with that, by the way. I mean, it's very easy to submit in a note to you guys for sale. Usually we'll have a counter or a bid back from you within 24 to 48 hours. And it's broken down very easily into either A, buying the full note, or plan B a lot of times will be the partial. Or if you guys won't buy the full note, you say, well, we don't want the whole note, but we'll buy a partial on that note, and here's the breakdown. And then it's always great. You guys, your whole staff does a great job of, like, if you're the broker, communicating with, okay, what do you want to get out of this? Is it a flat percentage? Is it $3,000? You know, what do you want to make for brokering the deal? And so that allows the broker to be able to see what's really going on and then communicate that back to the note seller.
Yeah, we definitely do our best to develop relationships with our brokers and be as transparent with them as possible. And you're right about the turnaround time with quotes. Our standard is to have a quote back within 24 hours. Most of the time it's the same day. If you go to our website, FNACbrokers.com, again, that's FNACbrokers.com, There's a fast quote submission on the website, and it'll ask you for all of the pertinent information, and you click that and it goes to everybody. We currently have 8 buyers on the note, 8 note buyers on the broker desk. It goes out to all 8. If you already have a relationship with one of them, they'll snag it and get in contact with you. And that's another thing that we like about the way we do business is once you start working with someone, you work with that person on all your deals. And so you don't have 2 deals with one guy and 3 deals with another gal. You're getting to know your rep, and they get to know you, you get to know them, and you can really
build a good relationship.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody in your staff's great over there. I mean, we've dealt with Jay. Jay's the guy that handles our bids we send in and stuff like that. And Jay's always responsive and gets back in a timely fashion. And we brainstorm on a few ideas on some stuff. Especially in going back to the seller, the note seller, and what they might say, and trying to get them to realize what they have or what they don't have.
Yeah.
It's kind of like dealing with a buyer who's looking at Zillow. Well, my house is worth this. Well, it's really worth this.
Yeah, there is quite a bit of realistic education that needs to be had sometimes with note sellers. Something else you mentioned is I like that you pointed out the fact that, yes, we usually try to make at least 2 offers, give you a couple options, and sometimes we'll give 3 or 4 because some partials are really usually a much better deal for the note seller. So if they are not like desperate to get out from underneath it altogether, man, if I were a note seller and I didn't need all of the money right now, I would do 3 to 5 year partials, and I would just keep doing them because they're almost always going to be at less of a discount than the full buyout. You don't lose your complete interest in the note. And so if you ever want to go back to collecting payments, you haven't already sold the whole thing. You can wait for the partial to be satisfied and then go right back to having your monthly cash flow. I wish more note sellers were open to partials.
Yeah, because it's a good way to still raise a big chunk of cash if you're trying to do things without giving up the full amount. And a lot of people don't need to sell the full note off, to raise capital with a partial sale, because you're only giving up 3 years of payments or 5 years of payments. It still leaves a ton of back end payments for you, but allows for you to get something in and get things moving. And so let's talk a little about some of the things that you guys don't buy, or is there loan balances you don't bid on to give people a good feeling for things?
Yeah, those are excellent questions as well. We prefer not to buy unpaid principal balances lower than. Do you think I need to explain what unpaid principal balance is?
We'll just say that's what's owed on the loan. That's good. They should be good.
So unpaid principal balances below 10,000 and lower are really we're not interested in those. But if you need to sell a balance that low, get a hold of me. I can get you in touch with a whole network of folks that would love to buy that lower balances. We are primarily, our bread and butter is our residential notes. So single family owner occupied, that's what we buy the most of. But we buy single family rentals, mobile homes with land, mobile home rentals. Commercial, we typically prefer partials on commercial notes. And this is something I would suggest to folks when they're originating a commercial note. Remember that the majority of small businesses go out of business within 5 years. So if you originate a commercial note that has a payoff or an amortization longer than 5 years, you are most likely originating a note that's going to default. And so unless there are certain factors like, the business has been around for 20 or 30 years or 10 years or more, we've got super great credit or a lot of equity, there are some mitigating factors, but typically when we see a commercial note, we're really only interested in doing a partial. We prefer that the commercial note have a personal guarantee with good credit. There are instances where we'll buy it without a personal guarantee, but we prefer the personal guarantee with good credit. And we'll opt for a partial that is very rarely going to be longer than 5 to 10 years.
Now, will you buy notes that are written to entities, to the personal?
Yeah, we will buy notes that are even residential notes that are, oftentimes single-family rental notes tend to be in the purchaser tends to put the note in the name of an LLC or a trust or something, and we'll buy those. The equity and the seasoning and the condition of the collateral are going to be more important at that point, because we can't go back on the borrower in the case of a default. Default, then we most likely are going to end up with the collateral, the home. And so it needs to be a home that we feel confident we can resell.
Now, let's talk a little bit, but you talk about collateral. Are you looking just at the receipts, like if it's the loan's written on a napkin?
Well, we actually did buy a note that was written on the back of a menu. Now, we did convert it. We had the title company because we want to get clear title and title insurance on all of our note purchases. And that is, I think, another advantage to working with First National or selling a note or brokering notes to First National is that we have a large processing team. And some of our processors have been doing this for 15, 20, 25 years. And so they know how to work out problems. And so if you've ever tried to sell a note and you get to the title part and you run into, oh, we need a release of lien, and your note buyer backs out on you because you need a release of lien, you're not going to run into that with First National. We can stick in there with you and work out the processing issues, the title issues. But yes, we want to get clear title. We want to get title insurance. And so in those cases where people bring us documents that are a little less than professionally made, or might give regulators a head spin, we will draft up new documents and correct things if we need to.
It's not that hard to go out and find a copy of a 1003. No. And oftentimes, too, this is where dealing with mortgage brokers is helpful, especially if somebody's been declined for a traditional loan because of either seasoning or DTI or other thing, or they've not been employed long enough. Go ahead and get that. If you've got a loan officer, have them go ahead and run everything through a 1003 or a Calyx point or something like that. That makes for a clean initial file for due diligence and things like that to keep in the collateral file, right, Daniel?
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Having a loan officer, a licensed loan officer, mortgage loan officer, loan originator, I don't know, they're called all kinds of things.
They're called everything. Those freaking brokers.
Yeah, those guys. They're also kind of like a servicing company, worth their weight in gold. They don't charge you too much to originate the documents, to help you originate the documents, and also use a title company or a title attorney. If nothing else, at least get a title search so that you can see if title is clear. And if it's not clear, try to work it out. Because you're going to have to, that's eventually going to come up. It's just because you ignore it when you originate the note and does not mean that title issue has gone away and you now have clear title because you have a new note. The title issues are going to follow the property. So it really does pay to do your due diligence. Get your own BPO so you actually know what the market value of the property is. Hire a licensed mortgage loan originator to help you with the documents, and use a title company or title attorney to help you get clear title and work out title issues. It'll make your life so much easier down the road when you want to sell the note or when the note is paid off and now you're supposed to produce clear title. So you can work it out at the beginning or at the end. Your choice, I guess. I would suggest the beginning.
Exactly. Question, Nicole?
Dan Satosky, he says, all my best deals are napkin presentations.
Presentations, not final paperwork, Dan.
I would expect that from Dan.
Huh?
I would expect that from Dan.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Dan Zatowski, exactly. Now, you mentioned something earlier on. You guys buy land contracts. Is that correct?
Yep, we do. We also buy contract for deeds. And in some states, with land contracts, in some states, we will have to convert the document to a traditional note and mortgage or note and deed of trust. In Michigan, we don't have to do that, so we can buy the land contract as is. Contract for deeds, we'll buy those, but we are finding that there are almost no title companies anymore that want to insure a contract for deed. And so we're basically saying now, if you have a contract for deed, we will have to convert it to a note and mortgage or a deed of trust, which does require the note payer to sign conversion documents, but I cannot think of an instance in which someone has said, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to have the property deeded to me. Most of the purchasers understand that having a mortgage or a deed of trust puts them in a better position because the property is actually in their name, unlike with a contract for deed. So yes, we buy contract for deeds nationwide. We buy land contracts nationwide, I suppose, in the states that do those. Texas, I don't think Texas even will do a contract for deed, like a new one, right?
Yeah, we don't do contract for deeds down here. It's too much like a lease option for the base part. So they violated that things, any lease option and contract for deed that's over 180 days. Now you can do it to an entity. If you're an investor, you can do a lease option and things like that to an entity, but you can't do it to a traditional borrower. It's illegal.
Okay, all right. So, and you bring up another good point, lease options. We will buy lease options as well. They'll need to be converted to a mortgage or a deed of trust. The only thing I suppose I should comment on with lease options is they need to be set up like a contract. There are some lease options where, there's no sale price, property sale price. There's really no interest rate. It's really just a rental agreement. If it's set up like a rental agreement, we're not interested in those. But if it's a lease option that actually has a property sale price, each month the person is building up equity, so they're making a payment that's applying to both principal and interest. We can work with those and convert those to a mortgage or a deed of trust and buy them.
Cool. Questions?
Yeah, Dan again. He says the problem with CFDs is that they can't get approved because they may not show income. Does that cause an issue? I think that's what he said.
So he's saying that with CFDs, not all the borrowers can prove income. Is that what he's saying?
It says with the DTI.
Oh, is their debt to income is being too high?
We don't look at that when we buy notes.
You're not looking at DTI. You're looking at payment stream, credit score, and equity in the property. Then basically.
Correct. Yeah, because we're not getting a loan application, and legally we can't force, when we're buying a note, we can't force the borrower to provide us with any information. So unless they willingly give us a loan app or tell us all about their income and their debts, we don't know that information.
So that's a valuable thing to keep in mind when you're looking through the collateral files. If you're buying contract for deeds, because we buy a lot of contract for deeds that were originated by Harbor and things like that. We know there's going to be some title issues that we got to clear up. But if you look at the collateral files, if you're purchasing an existing contract for deed, seeing if there is a financial document in there of some sort, seeing what the borrower makes, seeing that kind of stuff. Because really a good rule of thumb is to stay away from people that are paying more than 50 cents of their income towards a mortgage payment. That's kind of a high default rate when it comes down to that, right, Dan?
Yes, that is pretty high. And while I say we don't see that and we don't consider that, I mean, we would love to, because it is important. And so if you're originating a contract for deed, or not that you should anymore, don't originate a contract for deed, in my opinion. But if you're originating a note, I would take that stuff into consideration. You need to think like a lender, think like a bank. And so this person is applying for a loan with you. And if they don't want to tell you anything about where they work and what their income is, and they can't find the time to provide you with a free creditreport.com credit report, then they're not the borrower for you. There's a better puppy out there.
Exactly. Question.
Yes, two. So Dan asked, wouldn't they have to get underwritten by NMLS to get a seller financing and a note?
Yes, and that's what Daniel is. Dan Zadowski.
Yeah.
You guys are licensed NMLOs all across the country, right, Daniel?
Yeah, we are a subsidiary of a licensed lender, a national licensed lender.
Right. So if they're going to convert it from a lease option or a CFD to a traditional mortgage, they would have it underwritten by an MLO. So
yes.
Yeah.
Now, Dan does bring Dan Zatofsky.
Big game.
He brings up a very good point, or makes me think of something good, and that is, if you've done a lot of lease options to try to avoid the origination requirements
The Dodd-Frank.
yes, the Dodd-Frank origination requirements to meet the requirements for being a creditor. When you start converting those lease options, those conversions do count, or at least our compliance attorney, his current understanding is that those conversions are going to start to count towards your number. And so if you're holding 200 lease options, you're not going to be able to convert all 200 of those in 1 year and not be considered a creditor. You're going to need to convert like 3 to 5, we'll say.
Or go out and get licensed to do it, and it's not that bad to do that in the state that you originate in. I mean,
That's a good point.
It's taking a test, it's getting licensed, it's passing the FBI background check, getting fingerprinted. It's not that difficult.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, if you're going to be if you've got 200 lease options and this is going to be your daily business, you're right. It really would be reasonable just to get licensed. It's your livelihood, so you should probably be licensed.
Exactly. Other questions?
Yes. Christina Fuller. So during the conversion, is there no qualification requirements from the borrower? I think she just jumped in.
So did you hear that, Dan? To get it converted, is there any qualification requirements for the borrower?
No, not that we've encountered.
And then there's another one.
Okay.
And Michael Rogers, he asked, is there a minimum P&I that you buy?
Well, that goes into the balance. If you've got a $10,000 balance on a loan, and the mortgage payment on the other payment, that's less than like $80 a month most of the time, or cheaper than that. So that's where it comes into the UPB, Mr. Rogers.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, stay above 10. Now, one of the things, have you ever had the borrowers who are paying, pay extra to get their loan balance down to buy a little bit of equity so that the loan can be sold? Or the note holder forgive a chunk of the UPB to get a deal done?
We have had note holders forgive chunks, but that was usually the result of like a balance, a dispute over a balance discrepancy. And the note holder will be like, well, fine, I thought they owed $3,000 more. They're pretty convinced they don't. I want this to close. Fine. Typically our underwriters don't feel like having the balance, a big chunk of the balance forgiven in order to create equity necessarily is a positive thing.
Right.
I see scenarios in which they would be fine with that. And then but if it's an affordability issue, then that really doesn't solve it. It's still an affordability issue. You either have the money to pay your loan or you don't. Michael Rogers, his last comment made me think of something though, with the minimum P&I payment, interest-only loans. So non-amortizing interest-only loans, we will typically not buy those unless they have a balloon. We either cannot have, or we can only have a certain amount as a bank of open-ended or non-amortizing loans on our books. And so, I guess in that case, we would maybe reject a P&I payment based on the size, just because it's not large enough to am it out.
Well, that's not a P&I payment. It's just an interest payment.
That's true. That's an I payment.
That's an I only, baby. Now,
one other thing, don't originate notes for more than 30 years. There's really no reason to give somebody a 480 month or 600. I think the largest one we've seen was a 750 month AM.
What?
It doesn't, I mean, just 30 years. And if they can't afford the payment on 30 years, then they're not going to be able to afford the payment on 480 months. And just find a new borrower.
Yeah, 480. I mean, that's 40 years. 600 months. That's 50 years. Craziness. But you see occasionally those slip through. I saw something the other day where a bank was selling a loan that had 650 months remaining, and I'm like, what?
I wonder how a bank got that.
It was a non-performing note to begin with, so they figured something out. So
Gotcha.
now, are you guys buying non-performing stuff?
No, we do not buy non-performing notes. If you need, now, I forget, do you buy non-performing notes, don't you?
I buy non-performing institutional loans. I don't buy owner finance non-performing notes.
Oh, okay. Well, if anybody out there has non-performing owner finance notes, give me a call or email me. All my info is available on our website, FNACbrokers.com, as well as a wonderful video that I star in is on there as well. So you can get a hold of me, and I can give you some referrals for folks that buy non-performing seller finance notes.
That's huge. That's
re-performing. That is something that sometimes I forget to tell people. We buy re-performing notes first, position re-performing notes. And if I didn't say that before, I apologize. We only buy first position notes. If you need referrals, basically, if you need referrals for anything, give me a call because I know somebody. I'm more than willing to help you out. So we buy first position performing notes, and we will also buy re-performing notes. We prefer that they have been re-performing for a year or more. But if there are extenuating circumstances, I'd much rather see it than not see it. So bring it our way, even if it's only been re-performing for 6-9 months.
Yeah, because if they brought a chunk to the table or things like that too, and it's all depending on what the note buyer bought the note at too. If they bought it non-performing and picked it up at 25 cents on the dollar, they've got some room to get moved if they've been performing for a while. Question? No, we're good. Good stuff. Good stuff, man. You guys are rocking and rolling, man. It's been a good year for you guys, huh?
It has been an excellent year. Yeah, we have the last 3 years have been great. So like I said, I manage the broker desk here where we buy notes primarily through note brokers. And we have seen astounding growth the last 3 years, each year over the last year. And 2018, I expect the same. And I expect to at least do what we did in 2017, but I'm expecting another 10 or 20% worth of growth above.
Exactly. It'll be interesting what happens with whatever happens with the president or Congress changing up Dodd-Frank and all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, that has not had a drastically negative impact on us overall, other than we've looked at some packages from people who are considered creditors, and we weren't able to work out the issues in order for us to buy it because we're regulated by the OCC and whatnot. And some of those folks, they didn't even know they needed to do it at the time, and so it's not necessarily they weren't originating bad paper. They just didn't necessarily know what needed to happen then, and nobody really knew what needed to happen because Dodd-Frank has been so confusing. I still don't really know what's going on with it. I have a compliance attorney, which is good news because I'm not smart enough to keep up with RESPA and Dodd-Frank and all the other stuff. I'm a salesman.
So let's go through some things. You guys are only buying first liens. All right. You buy just about anything with a balance of $10,000 or more. Prefer it. You want the 10, close to 10, and then 10. Yeah, 10, 9, 10, 10, 9.5, 10 model. You will buy re-performing notes with 12 months of seasoning, preferably. You will you prefer that it's been with a servicer so that there's actually some paper. You prefer that there's actual paperwork with it, like a 1003 app and everything filled out, on more than just a napkin that Dan does. Dan Zatofsky does. Okay. And then you guys are are glad to buy from brokers all the time. And so it's FNACbrokers.com. Is that correct? The website?
FNACbrokers.com. Yeah, and you mentioned the things that we prefer. And, I like to talk about the things that we prefer because everybody likes to live in a preferred world. But we deal with what comes to us. So if you don't have a third-party servicer, or you did write your note on the back of the napkin, still, give us a call. I'd rather see it than not see it. So that's what we're here for. We're here to look at notes. So don't shy away. If you've got something you want us to look at, please bring it. We'll look at it. And if we can work it out and make the numbers work for you, we want to buy it from you.
Yeah, Dan or Andy Lemons now. It's on Andy Smith, right? Andy Lemons.
Yes.
Have spoken on note camps in the past, virtuals and stuff like that. And you guys missed out on the last one here in October, but you'll be speaking in April on Note Camp 5.0, right, Dan?
Yes, that is correct. And we're going to I'm hoping to talk a lot more about how to break into the industry as a note broker. There seems to be a lot of interest in that. I get a lot of calls, a lot of emails about how do I become a note broker. I'm going to plug somebody here real quick. If you're looking for lead lists, if you're thinking about brokering notes or just buying notes yourself, there's a fella in Oregon. His name is Scott Arpan. He's with Advanced Data Sellers or something like that. The exact name of his company is escaping me, but Scott Arpan, Advanced Data Sellers, I've heard, puts out great lists. I've heard that from several of our brokers. He can give you lists that are state by state, and I think he can even get down to like certain counties and zip codes if you want them. And they seem to be very high quality lists. And so I would definitely look for a guy like Scott or someone else and go out and get Scott Arpan and go out and get yourself some lists, do some mailers. If you want an example of what the type of marketing mailers that we use, I'm certainly willing to provide that. We have quite a few resources on our website for new brokers.
That's good. That's good stuff there, Dan. Good stuff. Good stuff. What else? So you guys, big plan for the first quarter of 2018, or does your business kind of stay level throughout the year? Is it peak or drop? You have different valleys?
Yes, we do have peaks and valleys, and this year was a little odd in that, I don't know if anybody else experienced this, but normally we slow down quite a bit in the summer, and then we have a big spike in the fall. And this year it was flip-flopped. We had great numbers all the way through summer, and then we saw a dip, an unexpectedly big dip in September and October. And that kind of got me a little worried about November and December. But then we saw that it pick back up and we're spiking again. We had a great November and we're anticipating a great December as well. And as far as the first of the year is actually usually pretty busy for us because people are getting ready for tax season. And so they either need to sell partials to raise some money for taxes, or they want to get out from underneath the note around that time. And then the spring is a little bit of a dip for us. And then the summer is typically a real big dip. And then fall and first of the year are probably the big spikes for us. But we're pretty consistent too.
Yeah, I would say that it's been pretty consistent throughout the year too, but I agree, the same things. A lot of people take off during the summer for the holidays and stuff like that, or summer vacation, but not so much this year for the most part. So that's good. That's good stuff, man. You got big plans for the holidays?
I'm going to Indiana. Woo! Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Hey, I got a note down there. Could you go by before we knock on the door?
Absolutely. If you ever need a property visit in Michigan, Indiana, or Ohio, just give me a call.
Don't say that, Dan. Don't say that. That's just for me, everybody. Not for everybody.
Well, and Zatofsky.
There you go. You got to call Dan. There you go. Dan Zadowski, exactly. Well, hey, Dan, I'll let you get back to your busy day. I want to say thank you for joining us here on the Note Closer Show. Lots of good stuff. We have any other questions from people? Lots of people liking it. I think you covered it, hit everything on the head that a lot of people ask questions for, which is great. So,
well, thank you so much for having me. And anytime, I'm love to do it. And please go to FNACbrokers.com. Give me a call if you want to chat. Email me. I prefer a call. I like to talk on the phone more than email. So call me.
That's good stuff. Say hey to Fred for me, all right? And Jay over there?
Will do.
Good stuff. Well, all right, guys, that'll wrap it up for this episode. Like I said, check it out, FNACbrokers.com. Our good boy Dan Malcolm there for you. I've known Dan for a long time. We were road warriors for quite a bit, going from different events to events. That's slowed down for me quite a bit, but you're still hitting the road pretty often, huh?
Yeah, I travel 4 to 6 times a year, so not as much as you were traveling.
Yeah,
but
crazy. Good stuff. All right, bud. Hey, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to you, Dan.
Merry Christmas.
Thanks, bud. All right, guys, we'll wrap it up officially for this episode of the Close the Show. Once again, thank you so much for tuning in. If you're listening to iTunes and any of the podcasts, Stitcher, Google Music Player, anything like that, make sure to leave a review. Make sure to share this if you enjoyed the show and enjoyed the information, because you never know who might ultimately become a note investor with you or may have a note available for sale that you could potentially broker and make some money on. So otherwise, guys, go out, be merry, and we'll see you all at the top, everybody. Bye.